show tonight, a poll stroll, an email squeal, and Bill Bradley's super PAC smack. But first, just in time for Halloween, it's an Obamacare scare. Republicans are on offense today after the Obama administration announced that health insurance premiums under the Affordable Care Act will go up by an average of 25% next year. Many insurers are also dropping out of state marketplaces.
Healthcare takeover is one of the single most important reasons that we must win on November 8th.
Trump also warned that people will see fewer insurance options under Obamacare next year, and he vowed to give people more choices if he becomes president. Democrats are pushing back. They're saying the subsidies for most people who can't afford insurance on their own are going to be offset with subsidies against the rising rates next year. But this Obamacare news has been a juicy fillet of red meat for conservatives across the fruited plain who have warned for years about rate hikes and less consumer choice. I give you El Rushbo.
This story on Obamacare premiums going up 25%, we need to stop for a second. Because this is outrageous, and it ought to have everybody in this country up in arms. By all rights, everybody in this country ought to be flipping mad and feeling betrayed and lied to by the Democrat Party and by Obama, and by extension, Hillary Clinton ought to be in deep trouble because she's out there advocating this thing.
So Bill Clinton, who you heard Trump say got in trouble big league for criticizing Obamacare earlier this month, again proposed fixing problems with the legislation today while he was campaigning in North Carolina.
So what would a country that was interested in being stronger together to do? You'd keep what's good about the law and attack the problems. She's the only person you can vote for that wants to do that. He just said, I'm going to repeal this law, trust me on the rest. Look, what are the problems with the law? We can all tick them off, right? The co-pays, deductibles, and premiums are too high, and the drug prices are too high.
All right, so, John, the Republicans are jumping all over this. They will continue all the way through Election Day. Is this a big game changer, or are Republicans overstating what they have here?
Where do I start on this? First of all, bigly, not big league. Second of all, that Trump camo hat, the new hat, I haven't seen that before, but that's sort of...
He's worn it before. Pay closer attention.
It's quite something. I got to pay closer attention. The third thing is, Rush Limbaugh likely is the perfect example of why this is not going to be that big a deal. Because, first of all, he says everyone in the country should be outraged. Most people in the country have insurance through their employers, have Medicare, have Medicaid, get their insurance some other way. This is not a small group of people, but it's not everyone in the country. The second thing is, over time now we have seen that there has been a stabilization in terms of how the public views this law, which is to say it's a little bit more unpopular. About mid-40s people like it, a little bit higher dislike it. This is not going to suddenly revolutionize that and start to reach people who, there might be some, small number, who are not going to like their premiums going up. But the idea that this is going to revolutionize the race, most Republicans have hated the law for a long time and now will hate the law even more, just like Rush does. But it's not going to change the dynamics of this presidential campaign meaningfully.
If somehow Republicans, not just for president, but other candidates, could be in a disciplined way to talk about this the rest of the way, I think in close races it could make a difference.
Well, I thought we were talking about the presidential race here primarily.
No, I'm talking about the whole campaign.
Yeah.
The reality is almost every Republican on the ballot doesn't support the Affordable Care Act.
Yep.
Almost every Democrat on the ballot does.
Yep.
And you're going to see places that are close where Democrats now are going to be put somewhat on the defensive, particularly in states where the announced statistics show.
Yep.
So, for instance, take Arizona.
Yeah.
You know, and in the presidential race too, you're going to see energized Republicans in defense of Democrats. I will say it's a great test for Trump. Today, he did an imperfect job. He talked about it a lot, but imperfectly. It exposes the fact that he doesn't really understand the law very well.
Here's the way in which it'll help. It's good for Republicans in this sense. A lot of outside groups like the Koch brothers and others have focused on this issue and will put a lot of money behind the media. This will be helpful, I agree with you. Possibly in some legislative races, some Senate races, Republicans will get a real talking point out of this, and it could actually help them in a meaningful way. But I will say for all of them, and most specifically for Trump, it would make it a lot easier to take advantage of this if you had an alternative to offer. What you will do. Donald Trump saying there'll be more choice under my plan. Well, there is no Trump plan on health care.
It could help Trump from being blown out if he's currently on a path to being blown out.
All right, on to our daily Wikileaks update. New alleged Clinton campaign emails were posted today on that show. Just today, that show, among other things, some downright vicious infighting between Chelsea Clinton and longtime Clinton aide Doug Band. But two fresh revelations are getting the most attention because they offer a window into how Clinton's team handled her unorthodox email practices and private server when they were revealed in March of 2015. The first is an email that seems to depict Clinton's top aide, Sheryl Mills, suggesting that President Obama knew about Clinton's private email account, even though he said publicly at the time that he learned about it through news reports. Referring to emails between the president and Clinton when she used the private account, Mills wrote, quote, "We need to clean this up." The second email turning heads today is a colloquy between then incoming Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta and Center for American Progress President Neera Tanden, who complained that Clinton's team failed to get out ahead of the email server story. In that message, Tanden says the campaign did not disclose the private account sooner because, quote, they wanted to get away with it. So, Mark, I have the same question for you now as you asked me. Conservative media outlets and the Republican Party are jumping all over these disclosures that they have over almost every disclosure in the Wikileaks story. Are these that relate to the email server, et cetera, are these as big a game changer as Republicans are portraying them to be and hope they will be?
These are pretty bad. I would say, you know, we've had days and days of this. These are as bad as there are in terms of sort of creating an atmosphere of a notion of an attempt to cover up Clinton behavior. It's so problematic for them that none of these are from Hillary Clinton, though. This is still staffers talking about things. No huge smoking gun, but it does give Republicans a sense. I don't think the dam is going to burst. I don't think this is going to be a game changer at the presidential level. But again, it does create a momentum for the Republicans and energize the Republican base as much as any of the ones that have been disclosed so far, I think.
Look, I think Sheryl Mills saying we need to clean this up. I mean, obviously, they were in damage control mode when this stuff came to light. That doesn't really shock me. The Obama thing is, there are a lot of questions about what President Obama, about the possibility that he had an anonymous account and was connected to Hillary Clinton's private account and what he knew. But that story was put to bed a long time ago. The White House came out and said, you know what the president was referring to is he didn't know that she had a home server and that she used it exclusively. He wasn't claiming that he didn't know she had a private email address.
The most damaging thing in here for President Clinton, not in terms of her chances of getting elected, is it shows that within her inner circle, finger pointing and suspicion that there are enablers around her, and that powerful people in her circle can't stop the enablers from enabling.
I don't disagree with that.
All right, a lot of talk about polls today, just like every day, and much of the discussion centers on two national surveys that show somewhat different snapshots of where the presidential race stands. The new NBC News SurveyMonkey poll, national poll, shows Clinton leading by 6 points, 50 to 44, amongst likely voters. But the ABC News tracking poll that's out today has Clinton beating Trump handily by 12 points, a mega landslide, 53 to 41%. There are, of course, a number of ways to explain discrepancies like this. How do the pollsters define likely voters, how they weight their samples, and whether the poll involves surveying people online. The more interesting question, though, than the discrepancies in national polls is the state polls in the battleground states. Clinton lead clearly has grown nationally, but Trump's numbers in some of the key battleground states have not moved very much at all. Take, for instance, North Carolina, where a poll out yesterday from Monmouth University shows Clinton with just a 1-point lead amongst likely voters, 47 to 46. In Florida, a poll out Sunday by CBS News showed Clinton with a 3-point lead amongst likely voters, 46 to 43, also within the margin of error. And in Ohio, the most recent poll there that we look at from Suffolk University has the race tied at 45%. All three of those states are, of course, must-wins for Trump, but he is not faded there the way he has nationally. So, John, what are the possible explanations for the discrepancy between Clinton getting to a big national lead or a huge national lead, but Trump hanging in there in some of these states?
Well, I find it a little perplexing. I will say that these are battleground states for a reason. They're not. These are states where, where the race is being fought in a very aggressive way. These people are hearing more from Donald Trump on the ground than necessarily a lot of national polls. People being polled are seeing only the news coverage, and the news coverage is almost entirely negative towards Trump. Some of these people in North Carolina, Ohio, and Florida are seeing Donald Trump, and he's making his case there more actively, and getting a chance to get positive news stories out. But again, still is the case. He's still in almost any of these polls in the state level, even the ones where he's doing better than he is nationally, he's still not getting much above 41, 42%, which is not enough to win those states any more than it is to win nationally.
Yeah, the people who think Trump has a chance would say, first of all, there's a secret Trump vote, and second, that she's the incumbent, so he'll get the bulk of the undecideds. I think the main reason why he's still holding on in these states is because he is spending time there, as you said, and because they've heard so much about Trump that the recent headlines that have moved Hillary Clinton's national numbers, they're not phasing these people as much because they're more living with the race. They're living with both candidates and their warts.
I'll tell you what, it's true. What I do know, though, is I know that none of this is about phony polls or about rigged polls or even about secret votes. For all you people who are saying all this crap, just remember what happened in 2012 when the Republican Party sang exactly the same tune and turned out to be wrong, wrong, wrong. If you keep singing that tune, you'll prove it to be wrong again on this election day.
There is a lot of private polling data, some of which I was looking at last night, that shows Trump is hanging on there in these states. Not enough to get him to win, not enough for him to be a threat right now, but surprisingly strong in some of these states where he could possibly win. But as you said, his number currently is too low to win.
All right. Up next, President Obama's party-building pursuits, and we will have former Senator Bill Bradley on the show a little bit later to talk about his new super PAC. But first, these words from our sponsors. President Obama has been out pounding the campaign trail on behalf of Hillary Clinton, but he's also making an unprecedented push to help Democrats running for the House, the Senate, and in state legislative races. Yesterday at a fundraiser in La Jolla, California, Obama said of this election, quote, "We want to win big, and we don't want to just eke it out." The president is endorsing dozens of down-ballot candidates this month and has plans with former Attorney General Eric Holder to lead a post-election effort to shake up congressional redistricting across the country. Mark, until now, President Obama has seemed wholly uninterested in the fate of his party over the course of the time that he's been president these past 8 years. But he suddenly seems focused not just on electing Clinton, but on helping Democrats more broadly this year and into the future. So, first of all, what do you make of what he's doing? And is this suddenly, like at the very end here, the emergence of Barack Obama party builder?
I would love a huge national, robust discussion about the way redistricting works, because I don't think it's good for the country. Democrats have been disadvantaged, but neither party should like it. Civic leaders shouldn't like it. I'd love for the president to do this. I am surprised at how hard he's working for Hillary Clinton. I will be quadruply surprised, though, if he engages in what is truly the most kind of technical, mundane, party-oriented thing when he leaves office. It'd be great if he does it. But I'll be surprised if he really devotes a lot of time to it.
But look, there's no doubt that he's actually putting his shoulder into the down ballot thing. There's no question about that. He's endorsing state legislative races, not just at the House and Senate level. But he's never done it before.
But he's just saying, I'm for the Democrats.
He's never done it before. But he's out there on the trail doing. I'm not saying he's actually campaigning in state legislative races. I'm just saying, unprecedented by him, to do this many endorsements, and he's out doing a lot of
He
campaigning.
endorses every Democrat in the country.
He's out there doing a lot. He's out there doing a lot of campaigning.
But this thing about endorsing a lot of candidates.
So the second thing is, again, just a little bit of a difference in how he's handled these past elections in the course of his time in office. This thing about redistricting, we agree about the need to fix that problem, and clearly Republicans gamed that system back in 2010 to their advantage. I actually am hopeful that President Obama and Eric Holder, who I think is key here, are not going to be trying to do this to benefit Democrats, although I'm sure they will. But really, we do need to have a big discussion about this because it's a huge part of the problem with the polarization that has messed up our politics.
It's got to be done at the state level, and so Eric Holder and the president would have to get involved in every individual state and the politics of it and the system and the courts. It's a local thing, it's a state thing.
I agree, but here's the thing. I think President Obama is not going to be in the weeds on this, but to have his name on something that Eric Holder is involved in an active way, not necessarily in the weeds, but just in 2010, again, I'm not even trashing Republicans when I say this. The reason they were so successful at gaming the system was they did it under the radar. To raise it up and have this discussion.
This is a political thing. Eric Holder's not the best politician.
To raise it up and have it in a big way, I think is important. We should have that discussion in a big public way. Coming up, a man who despises money in politics just launched his own super PAC. What the what? Former New Jersey Senator and NBA Hall of Famer Bill Bradley joins us next when we come back.
Half-century ago, Lyndon B. Johnson shocked the nation by releasing a TV ad that is still considered one of the most powerful political attacks in American history. The spot was called Daisy. It was run in 1964 against Republican Barry Goldwater, and it contained footage of a little girl picking flower petals just before a nuclear explosion. Well, now the good people of the Buckeye State are getting their own Trump-focused Daisy-style ad. The spot is called Careful. Take a look.
One nuclear bomb can kill 1 million people. That's more than all the men, women, and children living in Columbus, Ohio.
They're hearing a guy running for president of the United States talking of maybe using nuclear weapons. Nobody wants to hear that about an American president.
Why are we making them? Why do we make them? Why do we make them? Why do we make them?
The shadowy, well-funded super PAC that's running that ad, 52nd Street Fund, plans to put down at least $725,000 to air the spot in Ohio. The news here includes the identity of the man behind this effort. Former New Jersey Senator, one-time Democratic presidential candidate, Bill Bradley. is a well-known hater of super PACs. Senator Bradley joins us now to explain what made you start a super PAC to go after a presidential candidate with a negative ad.
Well, you know, Mark, I think the nuclear issue transcends all issues. Because if a president miscalculates, misreads the intent of the enemy, if a president doesn't have the leadership skills to diffuse a crisis before it gets to the nuclear level, then it doesn't matter what his position is on other issues, whether it's campaign finance reform or abortion or trade or immigration, because we'll all be toast. And I happen to think that that's an important thing for people to ask. Who do I trust with my life? And I think that's for Republicans to ask as well as Democrats, because we're dealing here with a very, very serious issue. And I think about Donald Trump, and I say, you know, he does not have the ability or the experience to be able to diffuse a crisis diplomatically.
So why not just go to Ohio and maybe give some speeches about this? Why engage in the kind of big money politics with a super PAC that you've derided?
Because I think that this is the best way to reach people, the most powerful way. You've heard me speak, right? I'm not going to sweep the crowds, that's for sure. But this is something you might ask, well, how did this come about? Well, you know, for almost a year, I watched the outrageous innuendos of Trump, you know, the slurring of African Americans, Latinos, and Muslim Americans, the denigrating of women, the attacking of the Gold Star family, and by analogy, the military, threatening to put his opponent in prison, attacking the American democracy with not saying whether he's going to abide by the result, saying dangerous things all the time. And I said, you know, I'm appalled. What can a citizen do? And so I had a conversation with my friend George Lucas, who came up with an idea for a commercial that would, essentially educate people about what nuclear war means. I then took it to another friend and agency in Boston who produced it. I then had it tested by the firm of my former communications director. I then started a super PAC, because that's the only way you get on. And I raised money from contributors who were Republican, Democrat, and independent. And we've bought time in Ohio for people to contemplate what might happen if Donald Trump was in a position with his finger on the nuclear button.
Creative director George Lucas, that's pretty good.
That's not bad. I want to get to the question about testing this ad, right? Because, you know, there have been a variety of things that Trump has said on foreign policy that have struck many people as dangerous. A lot of Republican foreign policy experts have condemned him. The nuclear issue seems to me to be obviously a big one, right? But it's amazing to me that that people don't discuss it more, that it's not gotten more traction out there, that he's kind of in favor of nuclear proliferation. Is this a thing that actually still resonates in today's world as a real threat?
Well, I think so. I mean, Bill Perry, a former Secretary of Defense, said we're closer to nuclear war today than during the Cold War, and that people are blissfully unaware of the danger. Right. So this is to make it clear to people that this is a danger.
Right, but this is the kind of question I have, though, is that for whatever reason, you know, people no longer, it seems to me, people are fixated on terrorism. They're fixated on ISIL. They're fixated on domestic terrorism. There's not a wide discussion of this. So is an ad in Ohio going to solve that?
Well, the question here is not just nuclear weaponry. Right. The question is the person who would be in charge of those nuclear weapons. Once the president says the missiles are gone, they're gone. They can't pull them back. And I think that, you know, as I said, there's a question of, you know, personality. Donald Trump is erratic. He is undisciplined. He lashes out. That's not the kind of person that I think we want to have with the finger on the nuclear button. I think you need somebody who is steady, not somebody who is impulsive. And, you know, the real question here is also focus. I mean, look at Donald Trump in his 3 debates. How long did he focus in the debate? Maybe 30 minutes, maybe 40, maybe an hour. He didn't even focus an hour and a half. And if you're president of the United States in a nuclear age, you have to be able to focus 24/7. And I don't think he can do it, and that's why I think he's a danger to America.
We've got about a minute left in this segment. You talked about watching Trump over the course of the campaign, but you two have a history going back to tax reform period. Just talk a little bit about that and what impressions you think he took about you and you of him.
Well, I was on his early loser list, I think, because the Tax Reform Act of 1986, I think, was one of the factors that almost bankrupted him, because we eliminated the tax shelters he was using to not pay taxes. So that was the origin. Then there was an issue related to his casinos in Atlantic City, which he thought the answer was sports gambling. Well, I don't like sports gambling, so I passed a law to prohibit sports gambling, which, also didn't please him too much. But the idea here is not what happened in the past with Donald Trump and me, but what the American people have to decide today and what kind of country we want to become. I travel around the country. I have for 50 years as a politician and a businessman and a basketball player. And I have an idea of what is best about America. Remember, when I ran for president back in the Paleolithic era, I talked about the goodness of the American people, and I really think that. I think the American people are decent. I think they're tolerant. I think they're generous. I think they are innovative. And that's the America that Trump has run against.
Okay, Senator Bradley, stay with us. We're going to come back, talk more about other things in the news with Senator Bradley right after this.
We are back with Bill Bradley, the former New Jersey Democratic senator and star New York Knickerbocker. Bill, thanks for staying on the court with us for some overtime. We were just talking about.
Now I understand.
Yeah, I get that. We're just talking about Wikileaks and Russia. So, do you have any doubt in your mind? There's obviously Donald Trump disputes this. Most others think that Russia is in some way behind these email hacks for the Democratic National Committee, and then John Podesta. Do you have any doubt in your mind that Russia is somehow involved in all this?
Well, I know that 17 intelligence agencies in the United States government all said Russia was involved in it. So they know a lot more than I do about this. So you have to say that, yes, they are involved. And to me, it's really unbelievable that Donald Trump would encourage a foreign power to perform espionage and intervene in the political process of the United States. I think that I've never heard that happen. It's just another one of the Trump things that you can't believe.
Knowing what you know about Russia, which is a lot, Do you think that the goal, if Putin is responsible for all this, do you think his goal is to try to elect Donald Trump or just sow mischief and mayhem in the American system?
I think the latter. I think he wants to demonstrate that, they have certain moves that they can make. Well, we have plenty of moves we can make, too. The idea is just not be provoked by things and react unnecessarily. And I think in this, I have no idea who Putin wants. And the point is, if I were running for president of the United States, I would not really want Putin to endorse me. And so I think that it's unlikely that, I think it's just a part of the strategy to let us know that they're still there.
You at times have been critical of the U.S. government for being too confrontational with Russia. In this case, you sound pretty outraged about their interfering with the election. If you were president, would you retaliate against them for what they've done?
Well, I'd be very careful, because if it's a retaliation, it has to be a retaliation that you don't know about. And it has to be sufficient to send a little message that, we know what you did, and we...
What's proportionate for the interfering with our election?
Well, I mean, in Russia, and I don't have an answer to what's proportionate, but the idea is you want to find something. There's no reason to go at them with a big cyber attack, because we have a lot of vulnerabilities here in our grid, in our financial system, and so you want to respond, but you don't want to over-respond.
Most important question is, will we ever see the Knicks make the playoffs, and will they this year?
Yes.
They will?
Yes.
Why? What's good? What do they got going on?
My old roommate, Phil Jackson, is putting a good team together. And, now that you bring it up, I asked the question to myself, if Donald Trump was a basketball player, would he be able to play on a championship team? And the answer is no. He would not be able to play on a championship team because he'd want the ball all the time.
And he can't go left.
He can't go left.
How many games are you going to go to this year?
I went to more games last year than I had in 40 years.
Yeah.
So
you'll be in the Garden.
I'll be there, I don't know, 7, 8 times, 10 times.
There's literally no one on earth.
Until they make the playoffs, then I'm there every day.
There's literally no one on earth who has more respect for Phil Jackson than me as a longtime Laker fan. But I will say that Derrick Rose, Joakim Noah, somewhere Sports Illustrated, we were looking at this today, and their preseason rankings said the Knicks had put together a fantastic team if we were still in 2010. These are some pretty old, broken down guys.
Well, there's a risk. There's a risk of injury. But there are also some good young players. One guy came over from Spain who was on Porzingis' team when he was in Spain. He's a great young player. So we'll see. I think Joakim Noah is really, I think, could be the heart of that team.
We're asking these questions just to make clear.
I like
the Knicks are opening tonight against the Cleveland Cavaliers in Cleveland tonight, so not sure how well they'll fare in that matchup.
It's a big night for Cleveland and Chicago. Who do you like in the series?
I guess I don't know. I don't have a dog in the fight.
Got to be for the Cubs.
Either one of them, because neither one of them has ever won.
I know. So. The Cubs haven't won in forever.
Yeah.
Senator, thank you.
Always
good to see you. Hope you come back soon.
All right, Bill Bradley. Check out his new ad and the Super PAC plans, all of them, on our website, BloombergPolitics.com. We broke that story. Fantastic, interesting, and spectacular. We will talk more about Obamacare when we come right back.
Our next two guests are medical experts. Well, maybe not, but they can talk about health care and the Affordable Care Act, which is where we're going to start with Democratic strategist Bob Shrum, who worked for, amongst others, Al Gore and John Kerry. He's out in Los Angeles, and here with us in New York, Anthony Scaramucci, founder of Skybridge Capital, a member of Donald Trump's Economic Policy Council, and the author of his new celebrated book, Hopping Over the Rabbit Hole, How Entrepreneurs Turn Failure into Success, available at finer bookshops now. Bob, what should Democrats be saying about the announcement regarding the Affordable Care Act, premium increases, and insurers leaving the market?
Well, first, I think this is a news story for the news media. It's not going to have much effect on the vote. Secondly, there's a huge amount of distortion in the reporting on this. Most of the people on the exchanges get subsidies, and if they get subsidies, they're not affected by this. Third, there is a problem which has to be fixed and which the next president's going to have to go to Congress to get fixed, and that is we don't have a third option, like a public option, that could see to it that people's premiums don't go up. But that's, I want to emphasize again, a minority of people in a minority of states. It's going to be a big news headline, I think, in part because the press is looking for a way to say Donald Trump still has an issue. Donald Trump still has a way. He doesn't have a way forward. He's going to lose this election. I said it on this program a long time ago, and this isn't going to change that.
Anthony, is this an issue that Donald Trump will talk about every day between now and election?
He seems about as indifferent to Donald Trump as Senator Bradley is. Listen, it's not over. Anybody that plays competitive sports knows that the election is not over. And so, could he win or lose? I don't know. But if he wins, you're going to have to totally repeal and replace Obamacare because Obamacare does not work. And I can explain to you very simply why. We'll just use the example of my cousin who's running an auto glass shop on Long Island. He had to take his people off his health care plan. Why? The premiums have skyrocketed. Somebody said to me last night, well, he's below 50 employees. That's true. But the premiums have skyrocketed for everybody. So now they're off the plan. They have inferior health care for themselves. He's hobbled in terms of the amount of people that he can hire over 40 hours a week. And what you're doing is you're crippling the society with good intentions with this plan. And so it has to be repealed and replaced. There has to be a competitive process for the insurance companies. There has to be tort reform. And there has to be a focus on supply, guys, in the system so that you can create more doctors to meet up with the 25 to 30 million people that you're onboarding into the healthcare. Now, these guys are not going to tell you this, but they want to go to single payer, and that will wipe out innovation in the United States and crush the healthcare system. So we've got to explain it to the American people the way it really works and what is really happening instead of the talking sound bites and that sort of nonsense.
All right, Anthony, I want to stay with you just because it's great to have you here now that you've been liberated from your previous captors.
I get the opportunity to sell my book at finer and not so fine bookstores.
Right, so here's my question. Here's my question. You retweeted your nominee the other day when Donald Trump tweeted a major story that Democrats are making up phony polls in order to suppress the Trump. We're going to win. I think he meant the Trump vote when he tweeted that out, but you retweeted that. So here's my question. You're a man of the markets. You believe in numbers. Are you saying you think that the polling is rigged?
I don't know if all of the polling is rigged, but I think there are elements of oversampling that gets done in these polls. You saw in the WikiLeaks stuff and Podesta's emails that there has been some oversampling, particularly the ABC poll. Let me just finish. You're asking the question. So
you can't just say that stuff and let's let go cruise by it. Oversampling by a candidate who decides to oversample for various reasons is not saying that the polls that are run by major media organizations, including this one, are distorting their polls.
So I'm going to say to you, let me finish.
Yes.
There is a suggestion that there might be. Even if it isn't, let's say the polls are exactly accurate. In a year like this, would the two of you say that there couldn't be the possibility of an upset? Would the two of you say that it was 52-48 for Brexit and it turned around and it was 52-48 to leave the economic union? That did happen in this year. And so what happens in our society right now, because of the media bias, is there's a tremendous amount of Trump shaming that's going on, okay? I've lost friends over being a supporter of Donald Trump. There's a demonization and a caricature of the man, which isn't true.
Bob, here's my question for you. What's your experience been so far with in your many years of doing presidential campaigns? Have you seen a lot of poll rigging over the course of your time? You've been on the losing end of some presidential campaigns. Talk about that.
No, and for someone as smart as Anthony is to suggest that somehow or other the polls are rigged because of oversampling is idiotic and shows a misunderstanding of what happens. Campaigns always oversample, for example, groups like Hispanics so that you can get accurate numbers. Those numbers are not then included in the overall results of the polls. And this isn't done by the public polls at all. We have the public polls converging toward a 7, 8, 9-point Hillary Clinton lead, 12 points today in the Democracy Corps, 12 points in the Washington Post ABC poll. And when you look at individual states, Pennsylvania's gone. Most of the industrial Midwest is gone. Georgia and Arizona are competitive. Hillary Clinton may be ahead there. It's a terrible demographic cul-de-sac for Donald Trump. He's not going to get out of it very easily. And the Brexit analogy holds no water at all for two reasons. First of all, those polls were close and bounced all over the place. Clinton has had a consistent lead for a long time. Number two, the British electorate is 88% white. The American electorate is 70% or 69% white. And Donald Trump is in a terrible position with African Americans, with Hispanics, and with Asians. There's no way those polls are loaded against him. It's just another part of this rigging scenario, which is untrue and which does no credit to him. And I can't believe that someone as smart as the person I'm debating actually believes this.
He called you both smart and idiotic.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. It was brilliant.
No, I said, how can somebody that smart say something that idiotic? It's a misunderstanding of what polls are.
What'll be interesting about the campaign, right? Because I am supporting a non-politician, and Bob's obviously got a lot of experience of being a politician, and so I'm not idiotic, and I didn't say that the polls were rigged. What I said was that there could be some distortion in these polls as a result of Trump shaming. Now, if Bob is going to suggest that the media has not shamed people from not saying that they are supporting Trump, they have. And so when they close
the poll numbers,
it would affect the poll numbers because when you're
okay. Well, Bob, let me ask you about that. Let me ask you about that.
Tell me how it wouldn't, Bob.
Let me ask you about that exact point.
Yeah, I'll tell you how it wouldn't.
Yeah, tell me
There's
how it wouldn't.
no difference between the internet polls where people are, for example, anonymous than there is with the live polling polls.
There actually has been some
So all of the polling experts actually think that this Trump shaming is the skewing of 2016. It's not real.
Bob, let me ask you two numbers questions about polling. Number one, given where you think the race is, what do you think Trump's floor in the national four-way popular vote is?
37, 38, 40.
37, 38, 40, not 39. Second, I had a Republican say to me today, who is no fan of Trump's at all, that he thinks in North Carolina, maybe in Florida, there could be exactly what Anthony's talking about, which is like with Harvey Gantt against Jesse Helms, that there's just people who won't tell pollsters they're for Trump. Probably not enough, certainly not enough to make up a 6-point lead. But do you think there's anything to that whatsoever, that pollsters are being told, I'm voting for Clinton or I'm undecided, when in fact they're for Trump?
Yeah, listen, this is the skewed polls of 2012, the version that we're using in 2016. I don't know a serious pollster, Republican or Democratic, who believes
Bob,
this.
that's a different question.
I know a lot of Republican strategists who say it's just wrong.
But, Bob, you agree that in the Jesse Helms, Harvey Gantt, North Carolina Senate race, Helms won, even though Gantt was doing well in the polls, because people wouldn't say they were voting for Helms, and then they did.
Oh, sure. We had two phenomena like that in my lifetime.
Right.
That was one. The other was Tom Bradley losing in California.
So do you think it's possible that exists in this race? Possible.
But we didn't have in those years internet polling. We didn't have the capacity for people to answer anonymously. They can answer anonymously. No one knows who they are. There is no element of shaming. That's why the polling experts say this is a crock. It's just not happening.
Anthony, in the last couple weeks, every day now we see Trump advisors saying we want to talk more about policy. You've said it too. And every day, almost every day, and even if he does talk about some policy, he talks about other stuff.
Listen, the thing that brought Mr. Trump to the table is his non-political status. He's a non-politician. Right. And there is 60 or 65, let's go with Bob's polls, 65 to 70% of the people don't like the direction that the country's going in. Is that not true?
No.
Okay. Okay. So the point that I'm making is that he got here to the dance the way he is. Yeah. He's 70 years old.
This is the way he'll finish.
I don't see anybody changing him, and it'll be up to the American people to decide what they want.
I was shaking my head at the control room. Anthony, thank you very much. Bob, thank you.
Thank you.
Make sure to check out Anthony's book, as we said, Hopping Over the Rabbit Hole. Bob's got a book too. It's a memoir. I recommend that one as well. Up next, we're going to talk to Sheryl Crow about what she's trying to change about our future presidential elections. If it makes her happy, can't be bad, right? We'll see right after this.
Here on With All Due Respect, we love interviewing candidates, surrogates, journalists, and of course, award-winning singer-songwriters. Right now, we're joined by Sheryl Crow, the founder of the Make It Short campaign, which is trying to limit the length of election cycles. We got a feeling you're not the only one, Sheryl.
Nicely executed,
Thank you for
John.
being here. I got my question here. It says all you want to do is shorten the election season. There's a whole thing here that I'm not going to do. But why?
Thank you.
Why do you want to do this? Why does this matter?
Because I have 2 young boys. I've spent a lot of time in the last 2 years hurtling over the couch to make sure I get to the remote control before they land on something that I don't want them to see or hear.
By which you mean some Donald Trump rhetoric? Kind of thing you're thinking
I just think it's been a really divisive campaign. Lots of hate speech. Kids are very privy to that. In fact, one day my 9-year-old came home from school and asked me if I would be voting for the liar or the crazy man. And I grew up at a time when I feel like the office of the President of the United States should be an office that's respected. What's happened in the last 2 years is not any more informative than it would have been if it had been a year or even 6 months. We're not learning anything new today that we would have learned 6 months ago. So I feel like we've got to use some ingenuity. We've got to pull our major 2 parties together and talk about a way to reform the situation. And I know that I'm not the only one that feels this way.
So let's say Hillary Clinton wins, and the day after the election, Ted Cruz says, "I'm going to Iowa and New Hampshire."
And I don't doubt that he will.
Yeah. How do you? Yes. How could you stop that?
I am in the long haul. I'm in this for the long haul. I want to see people really use their voices. I want to see people sign our petition and take their voices to Capitol Hill and do something about this. I don't think there's anyone that thinks that this is a healthy situation. The kind of hate rhetoric that we've seen has been really damaging to the political process. And I think there's a way, if you look at other countries, to create a process that we could feel proud of. I mean, other countries have much shorter political processes. Right. And with social media and all these formats for news and information dissemination, We have to be ingenious about this.
So you got Canada just had its longest election. It was like 11 weeks, right? You know, the British election systems are famously, they call it an election. You have a few weeks of campaigning and then it's over. A lot of people find that appealing. Here we have the First Amendment, right? Where you're allowed to basically say whatever you want, including buying commercials, go around the country. So even if you shortened the system, the American system, and said, let's have it look more like the British system. Again, to Mark's point, how could you stop without violating the First Amendment? How do you stop candidates from doing whatever they want? If they want to campaign until the next election and go out and spend money and travel around the country, how can you stop them?
Well, I'm definitely not a policymaker. I don't want to infringe on freedom of speech at all. When I was a kid, our curfew was set at 10:30, and I would always say, Dad, I want to stay out. Nothing good happens after 10:30. I mean, this is how I feel about this. If you want to go out and spend a ton of money and throw your name in the hat for this length of time, I think it undermines your message. We've gotten so far away from issues as it is that now it's just entertainment, and certainly no one benefits from a 2-year election except for maybe media outlets and marketing people who work on elections.
I bet about $1 million you violated that curfew, about $1 million.
I was a really good girl.
We're resisting the urge to point out you'd be putting us largely out of business if this happened. So you've got to.
I know. What are you going to do the day after? Right?
You got a petition. What else? How else do you envision this actually happening besides people signing your petition?
Well, listen, I'm a mom. I'm a mom of 2 kids. I know I'm not the only one that feels this way. There has to be a way for us to put our minds together and look at the primary season. We can't put all the primaries on one day, which was one of the original ideas I had. Hey, let's shorten it. Right. But then we would lose people like President Obama if he were up against someone who's self-funding. I would like to see a day off for everyone, including schools, where we go and vote. It's more fair. There are a lot of issues with our election that could be fixed, and maybe it's time to look at some of those things. But 2 years is too long, and I think the climate that it's created has just been extremely damaging.
I don't have any doubt that a lot of other people feel the same way you do, especially after this campaign. But do you think this is just kind of an artifact of the Trump-Clinton election? I mean, did you feel this way about the Obama-McCain election 8 years ago? Boy, I wish that had been shorter when Barack Obama was coming up.
I'll tell you, the last election, that was the first time I'd seen campaigns of real hate rhetoric. And listen, I sound like a dinosaur when I say this. I grew up with Walter Cronkite, like 6:30 News. I grew up with the debates. We had many less options for finding information. We had newspapers and we had the evening news. And we sat around and we had conversations and we talked in our communities. It was much more civilized. I don't think that we're learning anything more by it being 2 years. Than if it were 8 months.
Of all the songs you've written and sung, which is the one that most applies to this election? You got about 20 seconds to think about it.
God bless this mess.
All right, God bless this mess.
And
that's
if people
not
want
bad.
to sign your petition, what do they do?
They go to change.org/makeitshort.
Make it short.
Yes.
And you'd like it really short, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
I'd like for it to be about 4 days.
Yeah,
no,
especially this election,
I want it to be fair, and I want everyone to have an opportunity to speak. But I think, listen, we know our candidates' issues, we know their experience, so. Do we need to drag it out this long?
God bless you, Sheryl Crow, and God bless this mess. 2016, it certainly has been that. Sheryl Crow, we'll be right back.
Head over to BloombergPolitics.com right now for an interactive look inside Trump Tower, courtesy of our friends at Bloomberg Business Week. Also, Steve Yassino and I have our piece on Bill Bradley's Super PAC.
That's a great piece.
Anti-Trump ad. Coming up here on the television, Emily Chang has complete coverage of Apple's earnings. That's on Bloomberg Technology. John, I will be back tomorrow, same bad time, same bad channel. Thanks for watching.
A really good show.
We'll see you then. Sayonara.
I'm Mark Crumpton. You're watching Bloomberg Technology. Let's begin with a check of First Word News. The Justice Department and the FBI say they'll have election officials ready on November 8th to respond to potential crimes. Officials will monitor certain polling places, but will have fewer observers than in 2012. That's because a Supreme Court opinion gutted a key provision of the Voting Rights Act. The exact number of monitors won't be revealed until closer to Election Day. Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump remain deadlocked in the traditionally red state of Arizona. Trump edges Clinton 46% to 45% in the Monmouth University poll. Clinton has increased her presence in the state as the race has tightened. In Calais, France, more migrants are expected to join the several thousands who've left a squalid shantytown. The French government's dismantling the camp known as the Jungle. As many as 8,000 migrants who are living there are being relocated. Mexico's National Security Commissioner says drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman's health is fine. His remarks come after the kingpin's common-law wife filed a complaint saying he's faring poorly behind bars. The commissioner says Guzman is not subject to inhuman treatment and receives visits from his family and